But what's the chemical name for the flame retardant stuff that's in?
Oh,
in what?
Like Gatorade. I can't think of the chemical name right now, but anyway,
I know what you're talking
turns
about.
out that that's in the glucola. It has the corn dextrose in it, which I've already told you is GMO'd, and this chemical that I can't think of the name right now. So I haven't for 3 years now been having my ladies, but when I was under the hospital, you felt like you had to go with the standard of care. And I saw so many women get nauseated from this stuff, and I'd say, it can't be just the sugar. What is in this stuff?
Elizabeth came home, she would vomit for about 2 days.
There it is.
It was horrible.
So I haven't had folks do it since, and actually I only just recently found out about the flame retardant. I knew about the dextrose. I knew that was certainly...
there's a risk that a high... intense fire is going to break out in your stomach.
BVO, does that sound?
Yeah, that does sound right.
BVO is in Fanta orange.
Fanta. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I loved that soda growing up.
Service. Well, how many of us had that soda? Any of those sodas, not knowing it wasn't... Carbonation is not good for your bones. It causes osteoporosis.
Right?
Yeah, it causes them to be brittle. But who knew this other stuff was it? See, so many times they don't. What is the problem with the GMO? Is like the same problem as with the fracking solutions. It's somehow a trade secret. They don't have to tell you everything. They don't even have to label a food as GMO.
It's brominated vegetable oil.
That's it. Brominated vegetable oil.
Wow. Let's go right back to Lori.
Throwback episode 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
And actually, if you read, that's an ingredient that's in a lot of liquids and a lot of processed foods as well. Basically, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. Don't put it in your body.
Well, and ingredients aren't food.
That's right.
Right?
Food
is food.
We should all wear shirts that say "EARF," eat real food.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we should just be trying to do. Eat real food. If it's not produced, and make sure it's heirloom seeds. If the Monsanto didn't produce a seed, but if it's not from the earth, it's not something that was from creation, then don't put it into your body. It's not good for your body.
Just to point out, we were talking earlier, I've been in a hospital since I was 5 years old, probably twice a year, every 6 months, and it has just continued as hard as I try. Even as my health improves, I keep getting hurt. But and I had mentioned how I really ate GMO foods really solid, probably until the time I was married. And I'm developing Crohn's disease, as we had talked about, and all this other stuff. And now I have all these problems. What's interesting is my mother-in-law knew about this stuff as before she had Elizabeth, and she was her oldest, my wife. And they grew up eating the heirloom seeds. They grew up canning. A very low I think Elizabeth and Benjamin were probably, the two oldest were probably the ones that got the vaccinations, and the others, I don't know if Joel got any at all. But if you look at my wife's health compared to my health, it's staggering. Mm-hmm. I mean, she rarely gets sick. Mm-hmm. And even if she has a cold, she can deal with it so much more easily than I can. I got a cold a few weeks ago. I had a fever of 102 for almost 2 whole days. I can't deal with it. I'm taking garlic. I'm taking elderberry tincture. I'm throwing everything in my body to boost my immune system. She takes elderberry tincture twice a day, maybe a couple garlic, maybe 3 times a day. She takes it, and done. It's amazing.
Perfect case study right there. Just looking at the two of you, how from cradle to grave, we are now started on this path of being injected and having all these chemicals completely alter what our immune system was supposed to be. So that's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just thought of that as we were talking, and I'm like, wow, that's really true.
Well, that being said, in regards to birth, I'm thinking about a C-section. So like my wife was a C-section birth and I was not. Are there health...
It's huge.
So there are big difference in health effects.
Well, I think we had talked about this before. It's something called the microbiome. We know, and they diminish it certainly, and don't want folks to really meditate on it too much, but it's a huge difference going through the birth path, acquiring all the exposure the baby does to the vaginal flora, becoming inoculated, if you will, and that way, because babies don't come out with their immune systems set, ready to go. They have to have that developed, and as we've already talked about, 70 to 85% of our immune system exists in the gut, and that's acquired for babies going through that birth path. When you're born via cesarean, you're going to have some microbiome, because contrary to what was popular belief and contrary to what I was taught as a healthcare professional, your uterine environment is not completely sterile. So there is some inoculation that happens there, but not nearly enough, not nearly the same as what happens when you go through the birth path. So that's huge to not have that initial start. And when we were talking and you asked me what the rates of cesarean in this country, and you're looking at 1 out of 3 at least, anywhere from 33 to 37% of babies are being born via cesarean, via surgical birth, and most of these are not indicated. Many of them are elective. Many of them are repeat cesareans because they had a misfortune the first time, and they're not even given the opportunity to try to have a vaginal birth after cesarean or a VBAC.
Yeah, okay. If a situation were to arise where you had to have a cesarean, obviously you should never opt for it. Is it possible for you still to have for her to give vaginal birth?
Yes. You have to look at the individual situation. The big stipulations would be that, frankly, it's a good thing we're no longer doing the vertical incisions, that there were higher rates of what we call uterine rupture with that, where the incision would open up if the woman did attempt to labor. So thank goodness they're not using that route of exit anymore in surgical birth. It's all horizontal. And so the big thing is that the timing of it, making sure that a woman gets 18 months from time of when she had that incision to time of next baby. If that stipulation is met, that alone puts her back down to the 0.7% risk category, which is the same as the general population for uterine rupture. So it puts her back into the normal. So that, and no other health problems, no other medical problems, she has an excellent shot. It could be as high success rate as 85%, or as, in the 90s, in the low 90s.
See, I find that very interesting, because my wife and I, as far as we've always been told, you have a cesarean, that's it. You can never have a natural birth again. You have to have a cesarean.
That's not the science. That would be the opinion of the provider.
Right.
Interesting how that opinion appears as fact, isn't it?
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. I make little comments.
I was just thinking about Mandy, and, about my wife. Her friend in California has been pregnant both times at the same time that she has, and each time they've gone complete opposite, polar opposite. Mandy being natural both times, and, no drugs, no nothing, and then her friend was basically conned into the whole system that we talk about from Ricky Lake's film
Business of Being Born. That stirred up a lot of anger.
But I think there's a lot of truth to that, because she would text my wife, and she was going through all this. They're saying I can't do it. There's they were telling her she couldn't do it, and it's just horrible. And she was in tears, and she had to get cut open. So she's had 2 babies now. I feel really bad for her, actually.
Yeah.
When you go through cesarean too, it's harder for the mother to produce the breast milk too, isn't it? Is that true, or is that a myth?
No, that if they're allowing for bonding to happen, which there's the separation, obviously. If you've ever heard Mandy's friend talk about what happened during that birth, or those 2 births, you're in the OR, but you don't get to breastfeed your baby. In the OR, the baby usually exits with dad while they're still patching mom up, and so it can be an hour, 2 hours, and it's usually in the first hour that the attachment, the inoculation of the baby, lying skin to skin with mom, dad, if mom is not possible, all of that matters, and certainly nursing, and it's that initiation, and there's the other thing that can of course lead to what you're talking about is if she's, of course, inevitably going to have a lot of narcotics, a lot of medications for pain from the incisional pain. she is going to be less likely to want to be at the top of her game and be nursing her child every 1 to 3 hours, which is what babies need in the first 24 to 48 hours in order to get the milk supply up. I mean, there are some women that do brilliantly. I think that they do better when it is a repeat cesarean in that regard, but that does put them at a distinct advantage because it is about the management in the beginning, in those first critical 2 days. How often is that baby eating? That's what triggers your body to say, okay, yep, we intend to produce milk here. It's a go. Did I answer the rest of your questions about the...
Yeah, why don't you elaborate more on the health benefits for the mother, since we've been discussing the child's health benefits.
Yeah. Well, surgical birth, first and foremost, is 4 times the risk of a vaginal delivery, and that is because it is major abdominal surgery. So you've got your risk typically of infection and of blood loss. Usual blood loss, even for a non-complicated surgical birth, is at least 800 cc's of blood. Wow. And that's over a pint. And so many women will lose more than that. It depends. And so what we start seeing is that even just the normal risks that we associate are going up. The rare kind of occurrences that used to be 1 in several 100,000, because we're doing so many cesareans these days, we're seeing those go up exponentially too. Obviously, even though this report recently came out, we're looking at kind of a leveling off of the rates. It was increasing for 13 years. So if you look from about 1995, and I can explain to you if you want to know about the background, what was magical about 1995, until about 2008, 2009, every year from 1995 afterwards was the cesarean rate was going up in this country. And it wasn't until 2009 that leveled off a bit. There was a lot of external pressure for that to happen.
Right.
But so you're looking at all of these rare 1 to 2 percentile things happening more frequently because of that surgical birth.
Mm-hmm. So 1995. Yes.
So
what was
1995.
The year of magic.
It was unfolding in front of me. I was working in a teaching hospital up in Rochester. 1995 was when nationwide they changed the scope and the practice of the residency programs in obstetrics.
OJ trial.
Well, there was that too. It was obviously a magical year.
That's probably what everybody was paying attention to, along with Michael Jackson and his issues with kids and all that.
That was probably it. But
to throw in a little geoengineering here, there was a massive spring blizzard in '95 too that I remember, right at the very end of April.
So what, you're saying, a lot of chemtrails and...
Just out of curious, everyone, did anyone notice the sky today?
Yeah. I did. I really did. It was just something else. I should have taken some pictures, actually.
I had a chance, but I couldn't find the camera. There was one plane flying real low. I mean, it was clear as day.
Well, and it's when they intersect that I feel like they're just being obnoxious about it.
I said to Sam today, I'm starting to get... I've moved on from the point of, wow, this is pathetic, to I'm legitimately getting upset now that I'm angry. I like this warm weather. Stop it. Leave me alone.
Right.
It's not just about the weather.
No, but... And then there's the whole health things that they're doing with it, too.
Yeah. They're controlling it. So 1995,
sorry guys,
OJ trail, chemtrails trial, everything. Anyways, 1995, they changed the scope of the way the OB residency programs are run from being whatever the residents encountered when patients would walk in, that was their experience, to having a quota system. That meant that they needed to have X number of surgeries, X number of GYN surgeries, vaginal births were not as emphasized. It was assumed they were going to have enough of those, forceps deliveries, and so on, that they had to demonstrate numbers. That was a big change versus just taking whatever came and making your practice crafted to the need of the patient. And I never forget this conversation with one of the folks that was a friend of mine at that time in the residency program, and she said, we're now going to push epidurals. That was when epidural rates went up. And if you look at epidural rate went up, that's when the cesarean rate went up. And I said, oh, really? Why is that? And she says, well, we know that when epidurals are increased, that we'll see more cesarean sections and we'll have to do more forceps and vacuums. And that'll give me my experience. And I was with my jaw hanging on the floor, hearing her admit that they were going to tweak in order to get their numbers, they were going to tweak the occurrences, knowing that the outcomes would be altered. And then she said, well, but wait, I need to have these skills. I need to get through my program.
That
you know?
is so